My granddaughter called me last Tuesday. She wanted to know if I was okay. She said her mother told her I had chosen to move out. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the kind of thing Serena would say. She had a gift for rewriting history while it was still happening. They had no idea I had been sitting across from my attorney for 3 weeks by then. Let me start from the beginning, because none of this makes sense unless you understand who I am and what that house meant to me. My name is Frank. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the state of Ohio, which means I spent 31 years solving problems that other people couldn't see coming. I'm good at reading structures. I'm good at understanding how things hold together and how they fall apart. My wife, Carol, used to say I could spot a crack in a foundation from 50 feet away but couldn't see a dirty dish in the sink from 2 inches. She wasn't wrong. She was rarely wrong about anything. Carol passed away 2 years ago. Breast cancer. She fought it for 4 years with more grace and stubbornness than anyone I've ever known. And when she finally let go, she did it quietly, on a Tuesday morning in October, with my hand in hers and the window open so she could hear the leaves. I still can't hear wind in October without feeling like the ground has shifted under my feet. The house we lived in, the one on Callaway Drive in Westerville, was ours. I want to be very specific about that. Carol and I bought it in 1998 for $212,000. I made every single mortgage payment. I renovated the kitchen in 2007. I built the back deck with my own hands in 2011. When Carol got sick, I converted the downstairs study into a bedroom so she wouldn't have to manage the stairs. Every inch of that house had our fingerprints on it. It had 26 years of our life in it. After Carol passed, my son Daniel and his wife Serena came to stay for a few weeks. Daniel had always been close to his mother, and I think losing her hit him harder than he let on. I was glad to have them there. The house felt different when it was empty. It felt like a body after the person had left it, still standing, still recognizable, but missing something essential. Those first few weeks were fine. Good, even. Daniel and I would sit on the back deck after dinner and talk about Carol, about old fishing trips, about nothing in particular. Serena cooked breakfast on Sundays and left little bouquets of grocery store flowers on the kitchen table. She asked about my health, about my plans for retirement, about whether I was eating enough. I should have recognized it for what it was. But I was grieving. And grief makes you want to believe that the people around you mean well. The weeks became a month. The month became 3 months. At some point, I couldn't tell you exactly when the dynamic shifted. It happened the way rust happens. You don't notice it. Until one day, you press on something and realize the structure underneath has been compromised. The first sign was small. Serena rearranged the living room furniture without asking me. When I mentioned it, she smiled and said she thought it would help with the flow of the space. I let it go. The second sign was less small. She replaced Carol's curtains in the dining room. Carol had picked those curtains out herself, a pale blue linen that let the morning light in, with thick brown drapes that made the room feel like a waiting room. When I asked about it, Serena said the old ones had been faded. I let that go too. I let a lot of things go that first year because I kept telling myself, they're helping you. They stayed because you needed them. Don't be ungrateful. Daniel had picked up remote work during the pandemic and never gone back to an office, so there was no practical reason they needed to leave. Serena didn't work. They had no rent to pay, no utility bills. I bought groceries. I paid for everything. I told myself, this was fine, this was family, and family helped each other. The third sign was the one I should have acted on immediately. About 14 months after Carol passed, Serena came to me with a folder. Inside was a printed document, a home management agreement, she called it. She had typed it up herself. It outlined, in neat bullet points, how the household responsibilities would be divided going forward. It assigned her as the primary decision-maker for home maintenance, decorating, and long-term property planning. There was a line at the bottom for my signature. I stared at that document for a long time. Then I looked up at Serena, who was standing across the kitchen island from me, with her hands folded and her expression perfectly pleasant. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "Daniel and I just thought it would be cleaner to have things written down," she said. "So there's no confusion." "I'm not confused," I said. "This is my house." She smiled. "Of course it is, Frank. This just formalizes how we all contribute." I did not sign it. I said I wanted to think about it. She said, of course, no rush. But after that, something between us changed, a coldness that she was careful to keep out of her voice, but not out of her eyes. I want to explain something about why I didn't act more forcefully in that moment. Because I've seen the version of this story where the main character just rolls over and everyone asks why. The truth is more complicated than weakness. Daniel was all I had left of Carol. He has her eyes this particular shade of gray-green that Carol had, that I'd spent 35 years looking at. Every time I looked at my son, I saw my wife. And I was terrified that if I drew a hard line, if I forced a confrontation, I would lose him too. I was 63 years old. I had just buried my wife, and the thought of being alone in that house with nothing but silence and October wind was something I genuinely did not know if I could survive. So I kept my mouth shut, and I watched. I watched Serena go through Carol's desk one afternoon when she thought I was napping. I watched her photograph the silver candlesticks Carol's mother had brought from Ireland. I watched her stand in the doorway of our master bedroom, the room I still slept in, with Carol's reading glasses still on the nightstand, because I couldn't bring myself to move them and measure the windows with a tape measure. I called my attorney the next day. His name is Gerald Marsh. I've known him for 20 years. He handled our estate planning, our wills, all of it. I told him what was happening, and he told me to start keeping records. Write everything down with dates and times. Don't sign anything. And this part was his idea. He reminded me that I had a home security system installed after Carol passed. Motion-activated cameras at the front door, back door, garage, and one inside covering the living and dining area. Gerald said, very carefully, that I should make sure the system was working properly and that the footage was being backed up off-site. I went home and checked the system that afternoon. Everything was working. The cloud backup had 16 days of footage stored. I set it to retain 90 days. 2 weeks later, Daniel came to me after dinner. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Carol and I had eaten breakfast every morning for 2 decades, and he didn't quite meet my eyes. That was how I knew Serena had sent him. When Daniel had something to say on his own, he looked straight at you. When he was delivering someone else's message, he looked at his hands. He told me that he and Serena were expecting a baby. I felt the news the way you feel. Unexpected good news, a sudden warmth, a loosening in the chest. I was going to be a grandfather. Carol had wanted grandchildren so badly. She had talked about it in her last months, had made me promise to spoil them properly. Before I could say anything, Daniel kept talking. He said that with the baby coming, they were going to need more space. He said the master bedroom, my bedroom, Carol's and mine, would be the best room for the nursery because of the size and the light. He said Serena's doctor had recommended she avoid stairs in the 3rd trimester. He said maybe I would be comfortable in the garage apartment. I need to describe the garage apartment so you understand what he was suggesting. It was a single room above the detached garage at the back of the property. I had built it in 2015 as a workshop and occasional guest space. It had a small bathroom, a mini fridge, a window unit for cooling, and no central heating. The insulation was adequate for a workshop. It was not adequate for a 64-year-old man with a bad shoulder to sleep in during an Ohio winter. It was also, to be specific, dirty. I had been storing lumber up there for a deck project I never finished. There were spiders. There was a wasp nest in the eave that I had been meaning to address since August. I looked at my son. He was still looking at his hands. "The baby isn't due until when?" I asked. "April," he said. It was November. Serena was not yet showing. The baby was not a reason. The baby was an excuse. I said I needed some time to think about it. Daniel nodded, relieved to be done delivering the message, and went back upstairs. I sat at that kitchen table for 2 hours. I thought about Carol. I thought about what she would say, and I knew exactly what she would say, because Carol had never been unclear about anything in her life. She would have said, "Frank, you built that house. You know what it's worth. Don't you dare let anyone take it from you." I called Gerald the next morning. I told him I wanted to start the process of understanding my legal options. Gerald told me to send him photos of the home management agreement Serena had tried to get me to sign, all the documentation I had on the house deed, mortgage payoff records, property tax records, and to pull the last 60 days of camera footage and upload it to a secure drive he would set up for me. I did all of it over the next 3 days. I am an engineer. I am methodical. I documented everything. Then I agreed to move into the garage apartment. I want to be very clear about why. Gerald advised it. He said that by temporarily agreeing, I would give Serena enough confidence to continue whatever she was planning. And based on what I'd described, he believed she was planning something specific. He also said it would be harder for Daniel to claim later that his father had been hostile or uncooperative. I was not a victim being shuffled into a corner. I was watching and waiting. I bought a space heater. I killed the wasp nest. I moved a proper bed up there, and a reading chair, and a coffee maker. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself Carol would want me to be smart about this, not just righteous. It was the longest 3 months of my life. From the garage apartment, I couldn't see into the house, but I still had access to the camera system on my phone. Every night, after I made my coffee and sat in my reading chair, I would scroll through the day's footage. Most of it was unremarkable. Serena in the kitchen, Daniel working at his laptop, the ordinary traffic of a household. Then, one evening in mid-January, I watched something that made me set down my coffee cup very slowly and rewind the footage. Serena was at the desk in what had been Carol's sitting room. She had a folder open in front of her, a folder I recognized because it was from my filing cabinet, the one I kept in the downstairs closet that held property records and financial documents. I watched her photograph several pages with her phone. Then I watched her take out a piece of paper. I couldn't read it on the camera. The angle wasn't right and write on it. She took her time. She compared it to something in the folder twice. Then she photographed what she had written. I called Gerald at 8 o'clock the next morning. He told me to get to his office that afternoon and to bring my phone. I drove there and sat across from him at his desk, and we watched the footage together. Twice. Gerald was quiet for a long time. Then he asked me if I had checked my financial accounts recently. All of them. Not just my bank accounts, but my investment accounts. The brokerage account Carol and I had held jointly. I told him I checked my bank accounts regularly but hadn't looked at the brokerage account in a few weeks. Gerald pulled out a yellow legal pad and slid it across the desk to me with a pen. He told me to write down all my account numbers and the institutions they were with. I drove home and sat in my car in the driveway and logged into every account on my phone. The brokerage account had a pending transfer request, $22,000, initiated 4 days ago, to an account I did not recognize. The request was listed as authorized by me. The authorization signature on file was not mine. I knew what my signature looked like. I had signed thousands of documents in my career. The signature on that authorization had my name, but not my hand. It was close, but it wasn't right. I sat in my car for a while. The winter light was flat and gray, the way it gets in Ohio in January when there's no snow but no sun either. Through the front window of the house I could see the brown drapes Serena had put up, and I thought about Carol's blue curtains, and I thought about 31 years of mortgage payments, and I thought about a tape measure against a window frame. Then I called Gerald back and told him what I'd found. What happened next took about 6 weeks and involved Gerald, a forensic document examiner Gerald brought in, the brokerage firm's fraud department, and after the document examiner confirmed the signature was forged, a meeting with a detective from the financial crimes unit. I did not tell Daniel any of this. I went about my days quietly, moving between the garage apartment and the house, saying good morning, asking about the baby, behaving exactly as I had before. It was the hardest performance of my life. There were moments sitting at that kitchen table, watching Serena smile at me over her coffee cup, where I had to remind myself to breathe normally. The transfer request was blocked by the brokerage firm once the fraud report was filed. Serena did not know it had been blocked. She was still waiting for the money. Gerald filed a civil complaint and coordinated with the detective on the criminal piece. The forensic examiner had found 2 more documents in the camera footage that appeared to involve forged signatures. One related to a home equity inquiry, one I still don't fully understand, and won't detail here, because it's still part of an active proceeding. What I will say is that Serena had not been operating casually or impulsively. She had a plan. She had been building towards something for a long time, probably before Carol even died. That's the part I kept coming back to in those weeks, the thought that she had looked at our family and seen a target. Daniel did not know. I am certain of that. Whatever my son's failures, his passivity, his willingness to be managed by his wife, his failure to protect his own father, he did not know what she was doing. I know my son. I know the difference between a man who is complicit and a man who is blind. Daniel was blind. He loved Serena. He trusted her in the way that people who want to believe in someone will keep trusting them long past the point where the evidence suggests they should stop. On a Thursday morning in late February, Gerald came to the house with the detective and a woman from the county sheriff's office. I had asked Gerald to time it for a morning when I knew Daniel would be on a video call for work. He had a standing 2-hour call every Thursday at 9. I wanted him to have some warning before things happened, rather than walking into them cold. I knocked on the door of the home office at 5 minutes to 9 and told my son I needed to speak with him before his call. He came out into the hallway, already mildly irritated, laptop in hand. I told him that some people were about to arrive and that he needed to hear something from me first. I showed him the camera footage on my phone. I showed him the forged transfer authorization. I showed him the document examiner's report. I did not say anything while he watched. I just held the phone steady and let him see. I watched my son's face change. It is not something I will describe in detail. It is not something I would want anyone to witness happening to their child, regardless of the circumstances. He sat down on the floor of the hallway with his back against the wall, and I sat down next to him, and I put my hand on his arm, and I let him take whatever time he needed. Gerald arrived at 9:15. Serena was in the kitchen when they knocked. I heard her open the front door, heard the brief exchange of voices, heard the shift in tone when she realized what was happening. I didn't go out there. I stayed in the hallway with my son. The formal proceedings that followed are not mine to detail completely. There are legal processes still ongoing, and Gerald has advised me on what I can and can't say publicly. What I can tell you is that Serena was removed from the property that day. The forged transfer was permanently blocked and the funds secured. The home equity inquiry was flagged and canceled. There is a restraining order in place. The baby is still coming. That part did not change, and it should not change what I feel about it. And it doesn't. I am still going to be a grandfather, and I still feel the same warmth I felt the first moment Daniel told me. Whatever Serena did, whatever she was, the baby is not responsible for any of it. Daniel knows that. We talked about it at length. Daniel moved into a small apartment about a mile from the house in early March. We have dinner on Sunday nights. He looks tired, the particular tired of someone who has had a certainty removed from his life and is slowly rebuilding without it. I know. That kind of tired. I know it very well. I moved back into the master bedroom the same day Serena left. I put Carol's reading glasses back on the nightstand, exactly where they had been. I took down Serena's brown drapes and opened the windows to let the winter air in. I haven't found curtains yet that are quite right. I'm looking for something in a pale blue linen, the kind that let the morning light through. Carol knew exactly how to find things like that. I'm learning to look for them on my own. The garage apartment is back to being a workshop. I finished the deck project last weekend, the lumber I'd stored up there for 2 years, finally put to use. I worked on it for 3 days straight, which my shoulder did not appreciate. But there was something I needed about building something with my hands again, about taking materials that had been sitting unused and making them into something solid, something you could stand on. My granddaughter called again last week. This time, Daniel had told her the real version of events. She was quiet for a moment and then she asked me if I was okay, and I told her yes, I was okay, and I meant it. She asked if she could come see the new deck. I told her it would be ready by the time she visited. I told her I'd built it to last.